Hello and welcome to the GMS Magazine podcast. I am Paco Garcia, your host, and yes, I have a cold. This is a podcast all about role-playing games, board games, and the people who make them, sometimes also the people who play them. And this is the RPG Interview Room. This is a show in which I'm lucky enough to get together with some of the best people in the world of role-playing games and ask them a ton of questions about their games, their dreams, or whatever it is they happen to be doing right now. Today, I have with me Andrew Gronoski, who I've met in the past when he published the first game, Magonomia, which was sort of the Three Musketeers with magic. And now he is doing a collaborative project to get out Drintera, which is a classic fantasy world where the gods have different plans for us, but he will tell you all about it. Now, during this interview, we're going to talk about a Kickstarter project that is, for the time being, not going to happen. You see, Andrew has invested a huge amount of time and money to get Drintera out, and there are a number of magazines that you can get in DriveThruRPG. There's going to be a link in the show notes. For very, very little money. And the idea is to create this world. And for that, he's managed to get a good number of diverse people to contribute and to build Drintera in a different way. This is really a different kind of way of making fantasy. This is not a world like Forgotten Realms or Eberron, where one person has defined everything else and the other people have actually collaborated. This is also a system agnostic, so anyone can use it in any system they want. However, there's a problem, and it's that support is very, very little. And they were going to get the Kickstarter going. And because Andrew likes to do things by the book, he's been hit with a bill from a lawyer to make sure that everything is done properly. And that means that the stress of having to add those costs to the Kickstarter is a bit too much. And we discuss about supporting indie creators and how goddamn difficult it is to get out there. Andrew wanted to tell you all of this himself, and I thought it would be a better idea if I did it, because I didn't want Andrew to feel like, or anyone else to feel like they were kind of victimizing themselves. It is not the case at all. But I'm going to ask you to please just listen to the interview, listen to Andrew, and please, please, please consider supporting indie creators. Even if you don't think that you're going to be using their games or their products as much, but indies are where new ideas brew, where new creators grow, and where new IPs are born. And they are pivotal to the world and the health of the RPG hobby. So please, just listen to the interview and consider supporting an indie creator, even if it is with just a $5 a month, €3, $3 a month, whatever it is that you can spare. But if we stop having a cup of coffee once a month and give that money to a creator, we're going to be making a huge, huge change. Thank you. Andrew, welcome back to the show after way so many years, because the last time, I think it was when I was playing the first game that you published about 5 or 6 years ago.
That's right, about 5 years ago. That was Magonomia, the role-playing game of Renaissance wizardry.
Yeah.
And and we played it, and I still remember your colorful character and the good time that we had.
It was good. It was really great. But now you're moving on. You're moving on. I mean, is Magonomia over now? Are you going to continue publishing?
Not at all. No, we are still working on Magonomia very much. I've got big plans, but I've also got a small schedule. I've got a day job that I actually am passionate about and want to keep. Okay. And also it pays much better than tabletop role-playing games. So I have this enormous backlog of creative work that my team has done and wants to do and is doing, and it's a matter of getting that out to the public, and that takes a lot of my time, and it does take some money because one has to pay the people. Can't wait until it's done to pay the people.
Fair enough. Okay, so let's go straight into it. I'm telling you a little bit about
Yeah,
Drintera because this is a world, this is a fantasy world, but you're
yeah,
mixing an awful lot of different cultures and different civilizations, and the gods have a kind of different role than in most other fantasy worlds. Tell me a little bit about Drintera. What's the pitch
yeah.
for it?
Well, the pitch is that we're inspired by heroic mythology and world cultures. That's the short pitch. Um, so, what does that mean? I looked at stories, very old stories from European culture that I'm most familiar with, but also from other cultures, and the idea of what a hero is and what a hero does. And there are scholarly books and papers about what is the Greek heroic ideal. And I feel like Hollywood has got a certain idea of a hero,
Mhm.
and I'm tired of it. The hero in Hollywood is someone who's motivated ultimately by some kind of anger and desire for revenge. And you don't really see that, certainly not emphasized as much in our older stories. The hero is well, I mean, here I go talking about the heroic ideal, and I'm not a literature or anthropology expert by any means, but the Greek hero is someone who's called to excellence,
Mhm.
called to greatness, and it's not about defeating their enemies, although they may very well defeat enemies. That's part of being a hero, is being a warrior. Um, but to answer that call and to do something worthy of legend. And that's what the gods are challenging player characters in Drintera to do. They've announced the Age of Destiny. The Age of Destiny began about 30 years before game present.
Mhm.
So um, the player characters mostly will have been born into it, but it's still new. And yes, so the gods are no longer picking heroes. They will aid you as you go. They're no longer making the chosen one.
Mhm.
You gain their favor through your deeds. They're trying something new because the gods have been trying to make a perfect world, but they've been trying to make a better world with, first of all, competing visions, because there are many gods and they all have a different idea of what the ideal world should be, and also working with humans and mortals, not just humans, elves and dwarves and orcs. It's traditional fantasy in that sense. Um, but free-willed mortals, and the free-willed mortals just are really hard to guide toward building a better world. They're so busy trying to ruin it for each other. and, um, and the gods have I'm inspired by the immortals from Sandman, from
Okay.
Neil Gaiman's work, right? Where these immortal characters have a limited scope of power.
Mhm.
They have a limited, really, awareness of what's happening in the world, but they have an agenda, and um, they have their favorites. They have their favorite humans, the mortals that they try to use to accomplish their objectives. So the gods are more like immortal wizards than they are like um, a supreme being.
Okay.
All right. They have personalities, they have favorites, they can become offended, they can become inspired by mortals. Um, and I mean, that's not the full nature of the gods, that's the gods' agency in the world. I'm trying to make a world where the gods are kind of hands off because I want a stable world, dynamically stable world where we can keep telling stories, where the world won't be saved or destroyed. This is a little different from a lot of other settings, right? There's no big meta plot, no world threatening evil. I love Tolkien, but we don't have Sauron.
Right.
All right, because after you defeat Sauron, where do you go next? And there may be answers. The One Ring is a game. I don't even know what the answer is, though.
Okay. I'm
Right?
wondering. I'm wondering something though, because what is the god's motivation to want to work with us and to want to do this world? Because I mean, they have tried over the last few ages, and then they were
Yes.
for a while that they didn't want to talk to anyone. It was like, nah, you do whatever you want. This is your mess. You,
Hmm.
you sort it out. And then here they are now. They're back. Why? What's their
Oh, they don't.
motivation?
They don't. They don't tell you. The gods definitely are not in the business of explaining their plans and their motives to mortals.
Okay.
Right? Why they don't want to do that. So they don't want you to know. It's for. I mean, there's a creative reason. There's a metagame reason. The metagame reason is to invite people to become heroic and to go and choose their destiny. All right. And the fact that the gods said this is the spark that is supposed to motivate the players. But I'll be maybe a little too honest here, Paco. I did not even attempt to contrive an explanation why the gods are doing this.
Okay.
I just thought that it would make for it strikes the tone that I'm looking for, and it helps to set the boundaries of the relationship between mortals and gods, what mortals can expect from their gods.
Okay. So what does Drintera look like? I mean, are there continents or countries,
Yes,
or what's
there.
what's the world like?
Yeah, thanks. The world is a little bit like Earth. There are, let me count them. I've got 5 continents,
Okay.
and they each resemble, they're each based on a continent from Earth. So we have Niere, which is based on Europe, and we have Morthia, which is based on Asia, Dramagar, based on Africa, and I'll go ahead and complete the list. Throntru, which is based on North America, and Frimobar, which is based on South America. And we're creating fictional cultures in each of these continents that align with themes and cultures from the real world. So there is Twin Moons Empire in Morthia, which actually occupies at least half of the entire continent. And Twin Moons Empire is based on Tang Dynasty China. And we're not even trying to hide that. We're just trying to show that it's cool.
Okay.
So that's what the world is like. Now, I have my geography specialist, because all the creative work is really done by contractors. I set the vision and the tone, but the contractors run with it and express it and make it their own. And I wanted to make a world that's more mixed, where the people from one continent travel to another. They're in contact. They're in collaboration. They're in conflict, but it's much more symmetrical, right, than what we've seen in the history of the world. There was no European colonialism.
Okay.
All right, because the continents are easy to travel between, so people started doing it very early, and they're not as isolated.
Okay.
I'm trying to create a world that is more well, it's not that the world is diverse, it's the world resembles the modern world,
Okay.
right? Where we do have the delight of um, being in contact with people from other heritages. Okay, because
Mhm.
I just think players are looking for that.
I think so,
And
and to be honest, it a lot easier to create a rich and varied world that you can, exercise your own agency as a player and
yeah,
as a round the table creator when you're playing the game. So I think
yeah.
from my point of view, that makes perfect sense. But what kind of characters can people create? I mean, you've already mentioned
Mhm.
that they're going to be humans and orcs and elves, the kind of classical fantasy. But who
Yeah,
can they be in the game?
yeah. I am thinking. I always have Dungeons and Dragons in mind.
Okay.
All right. This is not made solely for Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm trying to explore and encourage a range of storytelling. But I also think a lot of Dungeons and Dragons players really are leaning toward the narrative style of gameplay.
Mhm.
But uh, part of Drintera is making it easy to integrate, easy to adopt. So you ask what can they do? They can explore dungeons, they can explore ruins, and the world is designed so that it has perennial magical places that the places don't appear, but the magic appears on a place and changes it and makes it into a place where you need to have adventures. The forest becomes bewitched or haunted, and then it's right next to you and you can go have adventures in it. And then after a while, it changes and goes away because you're no longer interested in that forest anyway. Um, and to create a world with, I guess, dynamic peril,
Mhm. Okay.
right? That is that's intentional. And let's see, what can you do? Um, you know, there really are two big threads, and one is dungeon crawling and recovering lost magic and artifacts, and the other is intrigue and politics,
Mhm.
right? And so it's kind of basic what
Okay.
you can do in the sense that everybody else is trying to provide this too,
Okay.
right? But those are the two main things that we're trying to feed because that's what I see and that's what I do when I play
Okay.
D&D or similar games. I don't actually play 5e anymore, and I saw your video that you're a little bit you're at least taking a break, maybe done with it as well.
For the time being, yes, I am, because I just find the D20 system is a little bit it's a bit too restrictive for me. It
Yep.
doesn't
Yep.
have the cinematic atmosphere that other
Yeah.
systems can provide.
Yeah.
And it's not that I think is a bad system or anything. It's just that if I have to choose between
Yeah.
playing roll D20, see if you hit, I'd rather go with my current love of my gaming life, which is the year zero engine, where you
Hmm.
roll a bunch of dice and you can do different things depending on how many successes you get. And getting successes is not as easy as it may seem by the number of dice that you can roll at any given time. So you still have that kind of binarism of not
Hmm.
being able to get something, even if you can do very well, even if you're amazing at something, you can still not do it. And even if you do it, you still have an awful lot of scope to decide what can happen here and there.
So I have in mind, the gamer, the game master like yourself, who has a favorite system and they want a cool world. So that's why Drintera is system agnostic.
Mhm.
Um, we're starting with assumptions that people will be playing D&D in the world. So
Okay.
there are wizards and there are clerics and there are halflings and orcs and humans and so on. But so that's part of who you can be. But we're also adding um, culturally specific um, lineages is what we call them, the bloodlines, right? Some people call them species or formerly races. Um, and I'm trying to think, have we got any that are really well developed? Nothing I can say right now. We've got a lot of irons in the fire.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about um, what's the geography going to be
Mhm.
like? Because I get the feeling by what I'm reading in the PDFs that you sent me that this is a very much an evolving world. So when people get into this, what geography are they going to find? What world will they be able to explore?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, so we're laying the foundations now. Geography, the world is designed so that you can travel around, and it's actually designed so that as your characters advance in level, advance in story, become more heroic, that they can move to different regions of the world. So um, the starting areas that you have, I mean, the things that we've already published are the ruined city of the Red Pillar City,
Mhm.
uh, right in Morthia. Okay, you recognize that one. Um, so mostly we're actually looking at urban areas primarily,
Okay.
and urban adjacent dungeons and the like. Although the issue that we just published is about the wilderness, and there is an enchanted forest in Nieri called the Hinterwood, which is famous for outlaws and doom and tragic love stories of forbidden lovers often flee there, and then different people have different endings for those stories depending on how depressing they are.
Fair enough.
Well, that's the thing about legend, and it's something that I'm trying to capture in Drintera. And some people might find it unsatisfying, but when you hear the tale from one people, they'll end it this way. You hear it from the other people, you'll end it that way. And what that means is that you can learn about the wonders that are in the world, but you can't really entirely spoil them.
Okay.
But you asked about geography, and have I given you a good answer?
Well,
We're not.
no,
Go ahead.
to be honest, I do like the answer because it makes me feel that if I get into this, I will be able to contribute an awful lot to the whole thing. Because you haven't given me a very
Yeah.
specific answer as to what, there's this huge mega desert in this place where you can do blah, 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 blah,
Mhm.
blah. There is no, these, kind of iced kingdom where you can do blah, 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 blah. So you're telling me
Yeah.
that the atmosphere of the game is going to be very much a urban, there is obviously a wilderness, but there is going to be an awful lot of discovery to go around. So for me, that I am the eternal curious. So for me, that
Uh-huh.
really rings an awful lot of bells that make me feel interested about the whole thing. There are two more things I want to ask you before we go into the production of the game. Who's involved with that, and why you have
Mhm.
chosen these people? One is the the lore mentions different ages. Are those ages still accessible to the players in the shape of ancient artifacts, lost traditions, that kind of this can have an impact on today?
Yes, very much so. I mean, we're building layers, and you want for a dungeon exploring storyline, you want ruins, and then that we have lots of options for how old the ruins can be and how they came to be. Um, yes, I mean, one of our I've already forgotten which issue it was, but it was in our first year, is about the Age of Thrones, which is when the gods were first partnering with mortal rulers to make divinely anointed kings and queens and empresses. And this, of course, ended badly with everybody going into war and destroying each other. But those civilizations are still, their ruins are still there. Actually, in Queen Moon's empire, the empire is still there. China has a very long history. It goes really deep. So those ages, and that is completely the plan, is to further develop these ages and their echoes
Okay.
that still live in the world.
Okay. And one of the last things I want to ask about is um, bestiaries. What? Because everybody loves a
Mm-hmm.
good. Everybody loves a good beast. Everybody loves a good
Yeah.
different kind of foe that they have to
Mm-hmm.
challenge. What kind of fauna, both
Yeah.
magical and mundane, are people going to
Yeah.
find in Drintera?
Well, it's a great question, and I'm glad you asked because we're working on the February issue now, which is a creature feature. It's going to, but all we're writing for this is lore about the creature, describing its powers and how it's a threat, but how it behaves, and how it came to be in the world. What kinds of creatures can you have? The answer is we are. You, I mean, this is an unhelpful answer. You can have whatever you want, but creatures that we're looking to support most of the D&D bestiary.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain creatures that don't work for me, and that we're not including. Mind flayers are kind of a Cthulhu influence, which doesn't fit, so we don't go with that. Beholders are D&D's intellectual property. Couldn't use them if we wanted to. What we do have, though, are your classic mythologically inspired monsters,
Mm-hmm.
right? Minotaurs. We've got both. Um, we've got both European style dragons and East Asian style dragons, and I'm starting to realize that there might be a third kind, which could be a North American style dragon, but we shall see. Um, so actually, this is an important point. It depends on the kinds of conflicts that you want to have, because you can fight against people as
Mm-hmm.
well. All right. You can fight against bandits and outlaws and enemy or rival states or tribes. Um, the difference, though, is that we're not confusing people with monsters.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is we don't have people in the world who are evil by nature any
Okay.
more so than others. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have, for example, the drow elves who are supposed to be dark and evil and living underground. I don't think you need that. Okay. I think there are plenty of really good stories. There are plenty of really good stories that are about people, fighting each other for plausible reasons. And so we'll do that
Mm-hmm.
instead. And they can be really shallow, right? This is to be easy for the game masters. All right, these are outlaws, and they've set up in this area, and they're trying to rob and brigandize the surrounding area. All right, that's enough. You don't need to go really deep.
Mm-hmm.
It's not Russian literature here, but more about monsters. Monsters are all right. I reject the idea of an ecosystem
Okay.
for monsters. Monsters come out of magic. They come out of the magic of the world. And I spoke of these magical areas that come and go, and monsters come out of those or reside within them. Maybe they're transforming, forest animals into giant, ferocious badgers. Um, we haven't gone really deep into the bestiary,
Mm-hmm.
but Drintera is designed to be a world where you don't run out of monsters.
Okay.
All right, there's not. there's not a way to pacify this world.
Okay.
It will always need heroes.
Sounds good to me. Okay. Haven't spoken about the world and what kind of things people can do. Why? I would like to talk a little bit about the production of the book
Yeah.
itself. It is
Hmm.
pretty obvious, apart from the fact that you have told me, but it is pretty obvious that there is a massive, massive push for diversity. Now, we have already said about how important this is because it makes the whole thing a lot richer and easier to create material for. But I want to know, why is it important for you to
Hmm.
have this diversity? Why are you pushing for that when you could just create your own thing and not make an effort and make it easier on you?
Well, I've been in the tabletop RPG community for a long time, and um, as a publisher for now 8 years, and I realized that I can give a boost to underrepresented voices,
Mhm.
um, to um, to creators who maybe want to start on a TTRPG, I can't even say it, career,
Mhm.
but don't have a great opportunity, right? It costs thousands of dollars, or the equivalent in your time and labor to make any TTRPG product. And, you know, um, somebody who's younger than me or doesn't have the advantages, right? Um, they might be locked out. So I wanted to create a vehicle for them and to be the change that I want to see. That's what I'm doing. I mean, I was inspired by the 2017 movie Black Panther.
Mhm.
And I went to see it and I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. But the enthusiasm from the African American community was inspiring and
Mm.
overwhelming because they were seen. And I want to make a gaming world that will do for tabletop role playing games what Star Trek did for science fiction, which is to show a world where people um, don't just coexist, but they cross, they combine, they affect each other,
Mhm. I love
right?
that.
Positively.
Uh,
They have a community. They have a diverse community. So that's really one of the pillars is how do we make a game world where there are diverse communities? Because I think our players want that too. Like
mhm.
they want a game world that's more like their real lives.
I love that idea quite a lot. So how are you going about finding people to work with you on this journey? Who
Yeah.
are your contractors? Who are your collaborators?
Well, it started with someone I know who's no longer with the project because and this is normal. There's no falling out or anything. It's just that people have in the freelance community they have different
The lives,
opportunities and so
yeah.
on. Yeah, but I started with someone I know who I know had who's Asian American and had actually already done an Asian themed gaming product with an Asian and Asian American team. And I said, well, let's start. Then that was the two of us to begin with. Um, and pretty soon after, I just had a couple of creators contact me on LinkedIn
Mhm.
because I have, and I said, all right, yeah, come on board. Um, so there were most of them I found through the community. I don't know if you're familiar with TTRPG Rising Tide. It's a Discord server for creators, but I found it very easy to recruit there.
Mhm.
And the way I recruit is I ask for people who have literacy in a non-European culture.
Okay.
All right, and that brings me people with the talent that I need. Um, the And there are some other creators that I've worked with from Maganomia. It's not, it's not all people of African and Asian, and we've got some people of European descent as well. Many of them I worked with on Maganomia. Some of them came to me with cool ideas, and it's been easy to recruit and manage a diverse team. The key is that you have to pay them, and that brings us to the Kickstarter. We'll talk about that,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So, but if you're paying um, if you're paying creators and to create, and you share a vision like I'm sharing with you, you know, I have had some people who didn't they started to come on board and didn't commit, but most of them are enthusiastic about this. So building a diverse team was one of the easy parts. Strangely enough, I thought it would be hard, but I've listened to what underrepresented creators have said. Things like, don't make us only write about our own background. That makes sense. So no, you don't have to do that, right? And I don't go out and say, hey, I heard you're Black, would you like to come work for me? That's not how I do it. um, but instead I invite the creators that I find, right? I look for people who are interested in different cultures than what you usually see.
Okay.
And then I invite them to write about what they know.
Okay. No, I think that makes a lot of sense, because I think, as a Spanish, if people only came to me to write about Spanish stuff, it would be like,
Exactly.
yeah, but also, and I think this is something that people don't realize either. Just because I come from Spain doesn't mean I know everything about Spain and I'm going to get it right. So, just because you're Chinese doesn't mean that you can know everything about China and get it right every time. Or just because you come from Algeria, you're going to know everything about Africa and know everything all the time. So it's a bit, I think it makes sense what you're saying, that you're playing to people's strengths and to the background that they can bring, not necessarily the background that could be attributed to them, considering their background.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that makes perfect sense. So let's talk in that case about funding and how you're creating this, because when just before we started this call, you were saying I would like to find out a way, the formula to break even in the world of TTRPGs, which is incredibly difficult to do for anyone, especially in starting. But you've been doing, these PDFs, these magazines of Drintera issues for a while now, and you have a Patreon. So before we go into the Kickstarter, I wanted to ask you, what has your experience been with Patreon? What have you learned thus far?
What I've learned is that with Patreon, I don't consider my Patreon to be successful.
Okay.
And I think that I suspect that there is a bootstrapping problem where you need to be recognized. You need to be seen in order for people to commit money to support your efforts, and that you've got to make stuff, right? How do you get to be seen if you haven't made anything? Some people have solved this problem by being a personality, right? By being in actual plays and being a colorful personality, and then they say we're starting to make stuff. But that's not me. Look at me. I'm managing to get through the interview, but I am. I'm old.
Well.
I'm boring. Well. Thank you. But, I'm very intellectual. Okay. But from Patreon, I thought it would be easy to get 50 supporters on Patreon. That was my first goal. I wanted to get 50 paid supporters. And I never got close to 50 paid supporters. All right. So that's not going, although I'm continuing to make the magazine, right? Continuing the discipline of editing articles, curating them, commissioning them, and assembling them together into magazines that I can't. I'll go broke before I'll break even if I rely on Patreon. Now
Yes.
I think that so this is what Kickstarter is for. Kickstarter is to get you a bunch of backers at once.
Mhm.
All right. So what I really need is the audience, the community of people who want to consume this, who want to read cool lore. I know there are readers out there. I know there are people who would love to read just a fantasy world. All right, with no story. People read stories for the world, but let's be honest. We know a lot of authors, fantasy or science fiction authors, who are better world builders than they are storytellers, and the world is the thing. So I'm not attempting to tell a story with Drintera. We're just showing you the world. That's the difference. But I think that there are people who would like to have that come in their inbox
Mm-hmm.
every month. All right. And if
Mm-hmm.
I can get a few hundred of them, which sounds, I know I saw you blink. Yeah, it sounds like a lot, right? But a few hundred in the global audience of gamers and of fantasy fans is not that much. So it will take a few hundred to make this a sustaining thing the way I'm publishing it now.
Well, fingers crossed you can get it. I mean, it really is not easy because although
I'm aware.
yeah, we have a fair amount of players, and I think this is something that I would like to investigate a little bit into. But there are an awful lot of players out there, but there's also so much content that
Yes.
for content to you know to really stand out enough for people to want to say, okay, I'm going to give you a fiver, even if it is just a fiver a month, because they have so many other people to give the fiver to. And it
Exactly.
really is incredibly difficult. And I don't know, because I also had a Patreon for a
Yeah.
while, and I was doing, little tiny scenarios
Hmm.
for Cthulhu-based games with,
Yeah.
a little map and some story and some characters. And I never got beyond, I think it was 15 people.
Right.
It was like,
Discouraging?
well, I stopped doing it because I thought this
Yeah.
is not worth it. I mean, I have to think so much. And what I had to do, it would probably take me easily, because I was drawing the maps, it would probably take me about 20 hours a month
Oh, yeah.
to do it.
Oh,
Just
absolutely.
thinking, writing, drawing, shading, correcting, layout, which was at the time very, very simple, and going for it.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I really don't have 20 hours just to get $20 a month. It's
Oh, I
just,
know. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I spend 20 hours a week. Um,
and I
uh,
don't have it.
yeah,
I don't
I
have 20
understand.
hours. I also have
Yeah.
a day job.
Yeah,
And that day
exactly.
job can be incredibly intense in places. And I have a social life I need to play because I have my friends. And anything that I
Yeah.
do for publishing or anything means I'm not playing. And it's like, I don't think I want to give up my friends for $20 a month. But it
Right.
is incredibly hard. I'm very dispirited. So kudos to you that are still able to do it and continuing with it. Believe me, I admire you.
Oh, we do need financial support. It's a make or break year for Drintera.
So fingers crossed. Okay, so you're going to go into doing a Kickstarter to try and galvanize a
Yeah.
community behind the world. Tell me
Yeah.
about that campaign. What is it going to be like, and
Yeah.
what are you offering?
Well, we're launching soon. Um, and this podcast is being recorded in mid January. So we're
Yes.
aiming to launch by the end of January 2025, sometime soon, next 2 weeks. And the campaign is going to be that you pledge. I know the number, $44,
Mhm.
and that gets you 1 year of the digital magazine. So it's one issue is free, so that doesn't count. It's $4. So I'm not even asking for a $5,
Mm-hmm.
right? $5 is a cover price, and we do sell some copies on Drive-Thru RPG. So you can go to Drive-Thru and you can find Drintera magazine. You can buy single issues now. There's also a free issue from 2024. January 2025 is going to be free.
Mm-hmm.
$44, you get a non-recurring year subscription. And there will be higher pledge levels if you want to buy all the back issues bundled with that. You'll be able to do that. We've got a premium tier with some high resolution art where I'll handpick 10 of our best art pieces, and you get those digitally as high resolution for your, I don't know, to enjoy. There are stretch goals. One of the stretch goals is a PDF art book
Mm-hmm.
to compose all our illustrations together.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that a very high stretch goal, which I think is achievable, is going to be to digitize the whole thing into World Anvil as a wiki.
Mm-hmm. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty awesome. Okay. How long is the campaign going to last? Because it beginning at the end of January. I mean, we're recording on the 12th. This is going to be out. Hopefully, if I have the time to do it tomorrow on the 13th, otherwise will be the 14th. So it won't take long for me to do this podcast. So how long is the campaign going to last?
30 days.
Okay, so
30 days.
This is the standard. Are there going to be physical rewards being offered?
There are not. And the reason is that the printing cost for color documents would be high. It would put the per issue cost outside of what I think the gaming community is accustomed to.
Mm-hmm.
Putting it politely, right? Nobody wants to pay $8 or $9 for a magazine that's they're fairly short. They're very deep. There's no advertising, but they're in the 22 to 25 page range.
Okay.
Nobody wants to pay $8 for that. I don't think. I mean, I think they should, because the work that my creative team is doing stands up to anybody anywhere.
True.
I think my team is world class. But the market won't bear it. So we're dispensing with print.
Okay. That's fair enough. Fair enough indeed. How many backers are you going to need to break even on this Kickstarter?
Break even. Of course, it depends on how many get the add-ons and the higher levels. But our funding goal is going to require about 120.
Okay, so that should be doable.
Yeah.
That should be doable.
And if we get more, then I'll be closer to breaking even. It's going to take a lot of backers. Mm-hmm. We'll have to exceed expectations a lot in order to begin expanding and adding more content. I would love to be able to do that in 2025 to say we've raised $20,000 and therefore I can start to add more artwork to each issue. But $20,000 is not that far from the total cost of making the magazine for a year. So there's that. I mean, it's I said early on that it was over $1,500 per issue is the total cost. And I want I want people to understand that. That's why we're trying to crowdfund it.
I'm really glad that you mentioned the cost, because that is something that I think people don't realize, because not many people talk about the cost of creating the books. We all talk about, how cool it looks, what it's like, but, no one, maybe it's something I should, push forward in my interviews when I talk to people about, how much is this? How much is it going to cost you to do this? How much are people going to be paid for this? Because I don't think that people understand the cost, and to be honest, not just in the number of hours that you personally have to spend doing this, because I bet you, and I bet this, and I'm not going to lose my right hand here, that you're not going to get paid for doing this. You're going to do this all the time. It's going to be for free.
That is 100% true. As a matter of fact, that's a business goal. My Kickstarter makes the pledge that all the money we raise on the Kickstarter goes to the creative team.
Why? Why not? Why?
To get started, right? Because you have to get to 200 subscribers before you get to the number that will let me get a paycheck.
Fair enough.
All
Fair
right.
enough. So let's hope that 2025 gets on that. So, um, of course, people already have these magazines. The Kickstarter will get you going for a year of magazine production.
Mm-hmm.
Are you envisaging doing a yearly Kickstarter to get this going, or are you hoping that this will give you enough to make do without Kickstarter and just continue developing for over the next coming years?
A lot depends on the outcome of the
Okay.
Kickstarter, but let's talk about that. Um, in the future,
Mhm.
I'm envisioning a book, Drintera campaign setting. All right, that you is printed in color and on, with a hardcover that you can buy. All right, we will get there eventually, but to what I'm trying to do is to finance the creative team as we build toward that, and to deliver value incrementally as we build toward that. Um, so whether it's Kickstarter or Patreon, some kind of subscription model, I think makes sense for what we're trying to do, which is to continuously develop and expand this world. And I will be, I will admit that, I think the World Anvil Wiki is a great way to deliver
Mm-hmm.
a world as a product. Um, because a 200-page book costs a lot to buy, and yet it's not going to go very deep anywhere in the world. I mean, building a whole world, um, there are creators at Greenwood,
Mm-hmm.
right, who made the Forgotten Realms. I should say for the audience, and Greg Stafford, who made the world Lorantha for RuneQuest. These people made lifelong careers out of maintaining the world. And I think that Drintera could be that, but it won't be a sole creator. It will be a creative director bringing in new voices. Some of the best gaming worlds now have had many, many contributors. Forgotten Realms has had many, many contributors
Loads.
now, of course. Exactly. But what's different about Drintera is that we started with a diverse team from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to make a difference in the emphasis that you see, and in the uniqueness of the world and the richness and diversity of the world.
I completely agree. What other plans do you have for Drintera apart from this Kickstarter? Because I cannot see you sitting on your thumbs doing nothing but wait for this Kickstarter to finish and then continue for the next year. What are you going to do?
We're still making the magazine. I mean, I've got a January issue I've got to put together, and then February.
Mm-hmm.
So I can tell you that you'll get good stuff
Mm-hmm.
if the Kickstarter funds, because our March issue has 3 creators of Native American heritage developing cultures and mostly cultures and also some creatures
Okay.
for a North American setting for Thrawn True. So it's my plans for Drintera are to bring my effort and the amount of productivity in closer into line with the revenue, right?
Okay.
With the income, right? So it's probably going to slow down, but it won't if if we fund the magazine, because so
Then the whole thing will be covered.
yeah. Well, if the whole thing's covered, then that's great. You know how Kickstarter works, where your initial goal ought not to be the full cost of your project. I tried that once, and it did not succeed.
It's
So,
yeah, it's a completely different kettle of fish, isn't it? It's quite frankly, I do find disappointing how Kickstarter it used to be, because when I did my Kickstarters, it was all about, I need this amount of money, people please help me, and that was
mhm,
fine. And now it's a bit like, well, I need this amount of money, so I'm going to tell that this is the amount of money that I need, and
exactly.
it's like,
Yeah, that's where I
really,
am.
really, so
Yeah,
this is annoying. Don't do
it is.
that. So, but
It is.
hey, what can we do? Andrew, thank you very, very much indeed for being with me today. It's been absolutely amazing talking to you again. I'm really sorry that it's taking so long for us to get in touch once more to talk about you and what you're doing. I really hope that Drintera will do amazingly well, both in Kickstarter
Thank you.
and beyond. I think just the sheer amount of effort that you're putting into it definitely makes it very worthy of the support of the people. So
Well,
I'm
thank
rooting
you.
for you on this one.
Yeah, I'm doing it for my team at this point, because they're very invested in it, right? And that is, well, their enthusiasm is contagious. Thanks very much for having me, Paco. It's delightful. I wish that we could meet up more often. Maybe
Mm.
we will do. Maybe we will.
That would be, an absolutely amazing dream come true, I have to say.